All right, everyone. The Brazilian rematch between Jair Bolsonaro and his opponent Haddad, who represents sort of the leftist socialist alliance there, is quickly approaching. I believe it's in 2 days, actually. Is it the 26th or the 28th? It's one or the other. But yeah. Anyway, looking at the polls, first and foremost, it looks like Bolsonaro's going to carry it by a fairly good majority. He's got between 55 and 60. He's already over the 50 mark. I don't think there'll be a problem. You'll probably see some attempts at vote rigging and some other shenanigans, suppression. It'll be on both sides, necessarily. You know, Bolsonaro's more the military guy, so that probably is helpful. Law enforcement probably on his side. But he came out with a statement, actually, and he was basically threatening to purge some of the far-left militias. You know, because in Latin America, you have a tendency to have these guerrilla movements where you'll have a bunch of unwashed Che Guevara-looking dudes that are out in the woods with machine guns, and occasionally they'll burn a farm down or they'll attack a village. And they operate outside of the proper constraints of a legal system. They're paramilitary groups, basically. They're militants. They're literally domestic terrorists by any civilized standards. Bolsonaro's saying, well, maybe I'll purge these groups. I'm going to fucking wipe them out. The legacy media here in the United States, and I'm assuming, I can't read Portuguese, so I don't know, but I'm assuming probably the legacy media there is trying to spin this and insinuate that this is him proclaiming that he's going to start, like, gunning down socialists in the street. Like, basically, you're a communist, you're a socialist, just a regular citizen with left-wing views, basically throw you in a gulag or something. That does not appear to be what he's actually saying. What he's doing is he's pointing out that he intends to crack down on groups that are similar to the kind that, like, the state of Venezuela runs internally. Like, the Venezuelan government literally has a separate pseudo-military force of socialist guerrilla fighters, some tens of thousands strong. They're not, like, as well equipped as a standard military, but in the case of the failure of socialism in Venezuela, which it's already failed, but you know what I mean, the collapse of the government, Maduro gets put in exile and the socialists lose power to evil capitalists. What these groups will do is attempt to destabilize the state, conduct bombings and assassinations and the usual despicable things that commies tend to do. And these groups operate within Brazil too. Don't try to claim that in the nation of Brazil, with the population, land area, and the vast rural lands that it has, that it doesn't have at least some tens of thousands of such militants roving about the countryside. Bolsonaro is saying enough is enough. He's sworn he's going to crack down on cartel violence, certain elements of corruption. You've got to understand, though, and this is a warning to Bolsonaro's voters, while he will probably reform things, and while he's certainly better than the alternative, at this point you don't have a sane alternative. You have someone who's far left, basically going to drag your country into more socialism, which is failing you, or you can go with Bolsonaro. Yes, he represents mild reform, and he probably, himself, of course, he's going to tie with business leaders. He probably will be a bit too pro-military in some respects, and there will be continued corruption. But will it be as bad as what you're going through, or will it be somewhat reformed? I look at him and I do see a Trump-like person. Trump represents mild populism. A lot of his fans expect him to be hyper-nationalistic, and the economy will be at 20% growth, unemployment will be zero, Russia will collapse, we'll no longer have a Cold War opposition, we'll rule the world, everything will be paved in gold. Some people expected that, the God Emperor sort of stuff, which is winding down now as people realize he's a good president, he's a reformer, he's populistic, but he's not really out there. He's being normalized because he is, by all accounts, fairly normal. He's like a Democrat with common sense. He's a fucking pre-80s Democrat. That's what Trump represents. Business Democrat. Here's the thing. Bolsonaro will be the same. He will be mildly nativistic. He will engage in populist economics. He probably will get along fairly well with Trump, which will benefit your economy. The idea of privatizing your oil company, probably a good idea. Petrobras, I think it is. You got one oil company. Well, no wonder you have problems. Wasn't that tied in with Dilma Rousseff? Wasn't that one of the reasons she got forced out? When people are rioting in the streets by the hundreds of thousands because things were so bad, and she had 2% approval towards the end. Yeah, her approval was those socialist militias at that point. Wasn't that part of it? Was in a Petrobras scandal. It was embezzlement of taxpayer money, wasn't it? If I remember correctly, that was years ago. Yeah, you probably should do that. I think that's a great idea. Privatize as much as you can. And yeah, crack down on the cartels. By the way, decriminalize some of these drugs and they'll be less of a problem. I said years ago that fundamentally what would cure Brazil's ailment wasn't, the replacement of socialism with center-leftism, quasi-liberalism, which is what they did. What will save them is an adoption of certain libertarian principles, a much more free market economy, yes, privatization, stop with some of the moral haranguing, and Brazil will very quickly be very much more developed than it is. It certainly won't be in recession anymore. That's what I suggested then. I hold to that. It was fucking almost 4 years ago. Bolsonaro represents a missing link between what I'm suggesting and what you have, which is better than the alternative, which is what you have, only even further left. That would if you vote for Haddad, you're voting to fuck your own economy and to continue being a pariah within this hemisphere. You'll be one of a number of nations that is, not failed. It's not Brazil's not a failed state, but it has systemic problems. It does have a lot of crime issues, a lot of corruption issues. Bolsonaro can't solve them all, but he can take care of some of them some of the way, leading to a situation in which your country can do better than it currently is. Yes, so Bolsonaro should be your next leader. No, he's not going to purge people in the street. He's not going to turn you into a military dictatorship. He's not going to start gunning down civilians because they happen to be left-wing. All of these things are being worried about by the same corporate media that said that if Trump was elected here, we'd be in another Great Depression, possibly at the brink of World War III. The economy would be non-existent, and he would be a dictator by now. Have any of these things happened, or is the opposite true? He's some fascist. He's repealing layers of government regulation. Horrible authoritarian. He wants private citizens to be more well defended against tyranny. He's so horrible with economics. We're in a boom time right now. It's terrible. I mean, God, I'm going to save money on taxes, and more people around me are employed, or and not underemployed. Oh, horror, terrible things, says Paul Krugman. We should be at 10% unemployment. It's healthy for the economy somehow. It's healthy if a tenth of your population doesn't have a fucking job. Yeah, this is what these people actually believe. So don't listen to them. They're just fear-mongering, and a lot of it's just clickbait. You gotta understand, in some cases, it's not politically motivated. It's basically everyone else is fear-mongering and worried. We're gonna be juicier than them, and so they run around like a dog chasing its tail, and they get more and more insane until they fucking fall over in a dizzy haze. That's what the legacy media is doing here. It's starting to tip over at this point, to get really, really dizzy and get ready to barf and then read its vomit like a fucking animal. Because the legacy media here has run itself into the ground. It chased its tail so long it's chasing it around a rut by now. It can barely even get back out of it if it tries. So that's the problem here. The same will be true of Bolsonaro. Look for continued high-level propaganda until the election is held, and then they'll keep it up after. They'll try to kneecap him by convincing you that everything that he does is a dog whistle to some secret group of Nazis down there. That's about all. Peace out.